The accidental kiss. The bustling alien marketplace was alive with energy. Bright lights blinked overhead. Strange creatures bargained in languages James Carter couldn't understand, and the smell of exotic spices filled the air. James, a human diplomat sent to negotiate a trade deal, found himself lost in the chaos. He adjusted the translator device in his ear, hoping it would help him make sense of the alien chatter around him. "Excuse me," James muttered as he weaved through the crowd. A towering alien with tentacle-like arms hissed at him when he accidentally brushed past it. "Sorry," James added quickly, raising his hands in apology. The marketplace was overwhelming. Vendors shouted over each other. Holographic signs advertised goods James couldn't identify, and he could feel the curious stares of the alien crowd. Humans were still a relatively new presence in this part of the galaxy, and James couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As James turned a corner, he stumbled into a commotion. A vendor, frustrated with a customer, threw a basket of glowing purple fruit into the air. The fruit flew directly toward James. Panicked, he ducked, but not fast enough. The fruit hit him square in the chest, knocking him off balance. He stumbled backward, colliding with someone behind him. Before he could regain his footing, his lips accidentally brushed against the cheek of the person he'd fallen into. Time seemed to freeze. James blinked, realizing he had just kissed an alien. But this wasn't just any alien. The figure standing before him was tall and imposing, with shimmering, opalescent scales that caught the light. Her piercing violet eyes locked onto him, wide with shock. She was dressed in a sleek uniform adorned with intricate insignias, clearly someone of high rank. The alien woman touched her cheek, her expression shifting from surprise to fury. The crowd around them gasped, and James could feel the weight of every stare. "You," the woman growled, her voice low and dangerous. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" James took a step back, raising his hands defensively. "I'm so sorry. It was an accident. I didn't mean to." "Silence," the alien snapped. Her voice carried authority, silencing not just James, but the entire marketplace. The murmuring crowd quickly quieted, their attention fixed on the scene unfolding before them. I don't know what just happened," James stammered. "It's not what it looks like. I swear." The alien's violet eyes narrowed. "Do you even understand the gravity of this situation, human? Do you know who I am?" James swallowed hard. He had no idea who she was, but judging by the respectful bows some of the other aliens were giving her, she was important. Very important. "I'm Commander Xyra of the Valerian Fleet," she declared, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "And you, human, have just bound our souls together." James froze, unsure if he had heard her correctly. I what?" "You kissed me," Xyra said through gritted teeth. "In my culture, a kiss is a sacred ritual. It creates an unbreakable soul bond between two beings." James blinked, his brain struggling to process what she was saying. "Wait, soul bond? What does that even mean?" Xyra stepped closer, towering over him. Her scales seemed to shimmer more brightly, a sign of her rising anger. "It means that from this moment forward, our life forces are linked. If one of us suffers, so does the other. If one of us dies," she paused, letting the weight of her words sink in, "so does the other." James's jaw dropped. "You've got to be kidding me." "I do not joke about matters of the soul," Xyra said coldly. She turned to the crowd, her voice booming. "Clear the area. Now." The crowd quickly dispersed, leaving James and Xyra alone in the center of the marketplace. James glanced around, hoping for some kind of escape, but before he could make a move, Xyra grabbed his arm. "You're coming with me," she said firmly. "What?" "No," James protested. "I didn't mean to do anything. This is all just a big misunderstanding." Xyra's grip tightened. "Misunderstanding or not, the bond is real. And until I figure out how to deal with this, you're not leaving my sight." Before James could argue further, a sleek Valerian transport ship descended from above. Its engines hummed softly as it landed, and a ramp extended toward them. Syra pulled James toward the ship, ignoring his protests. "Wait, where are you taking me?" James asked, panic creeping into his voice. "To my ship," Syra replied. "You've caused enough trouble for one day. Now it's time to face the consequences." As they boarded the ship, James couldn't help but wonder how his simple diplomatic mission had turned into this. He had accidentally kissed an alien commander, and now he was apparently soulbound to her. Whatever was coming next, he had a feeling it wasn't going to be good. The ship's doors closed behind them, and James felt the floor rumble as they took off. He glanced at Syra, who stood with her arms crossed, glaring at him. "I don't know how humans handle these things," she said, "but in Valerian culture, you've just made the biggest mistake of your life." James sighed, his shoulders slumping. Great, just great. The adventure had only just begun, a bond that cannot be broken. The ship hummed quietly as it glided through the void of space, leaving the chaos of the alien marketplace behind. James Carter sat stiffly in the corner of Syra's private quarters, his mind racing. The room was stark yet elegant, with walls made of glowing panels and intricate patterns etched into the metal. It felt more like a command center than a living space, which only added to James's unease. Syra stood across from him, her piercing violet eyes locked onto his. She hadn't said a word since they left the marketplace, and the silence was suffocating. James shifted uncomfortably, trying to break the tension. "So, this bond thing," he began, his voice cracking slightly. "It's not permanent, right? There's gotta be a way to, I don't know, undo it." Syra's tail flicked behind her, a sharp, irritated movement. "Undo it," she repeated, her tone laced with disdain. "You think this is some trivial mistake that can simply be erased. Humans truly have no concept of consequence." James frowned. "Hey, I said I was sorry. I didn't exactly plan on whatever this is." Syra stepped closer, her imposing figure casting a shadow over him. "Listen carefully, human," she said, her voice cold and measured. "This is not some minor inconvenience. Our life forces are now intertwined. If I am harmed, you will feel it. If I am weakened, so are you. And if either of us dies, we both die." James finished for her, his throat dry. "Yeah, you mentioned that part." Syra narrowed her eyes. "Good. Then perhaps you'll understand why this situation is unacceptable. My position as a Valerian commander requires me to be focused, strong, and unyielding. Being tethered to a fragile, impulsive human like you is a liability I cannot afford." James bristled at her words. "Hey, I'm not fragile, and I'm definitely not a liability. If anything, you're the one making this more dramatic than it needs to be." Syra's scales shimmered faintly, a subtle sign of her frustration. She turned away, her gaze fixed on the viewport that stretched across the wall. Beyond it, stars streaked by in brilliant lines of light. For a moment, she was silent, her posture rigid. "You don't understand, do you?" she said finally, her voice softer but no less intense. "This bond is sacred in Valerian culture. It is a union of souls, something that cannot be taken lightly. For my people, it is the highest form of connection, one that requires trust, loyalty, and love." James blinked, caught off guard. "Love? Whoa, hold on. We just met. There's no love happening here. This is just a really weird accident." Syra's tail lashed again, and she spun to face him. "It doesn't matter how it began. The bond exists, and it cannot be broken. Not by you, not by me, not by anyone." James opened his mouth to argue but stopped when he noticed something strange. A faint glow had appeared around Syra's chest, a soft, golden light that pulsed in time with his own heartbeat. He glanced down, realizing the same light was emanating from him. What? What is that? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zyra's expression darkened. The bond, she said simply. It's strengthening. Before James could process what that meant, a sharp pain shot through his chest. He gasped, clutching his shirt, and fell to his knees. Zyra staggered as well, gripping the edge of the table to steady herself. The light between them flared brighter, filling the room with an otherworldly glow. "Do you what's happening?" James managed to choke out. "The bond is sensing our life forces," Zyra said through gritted teeth. "It's painful at first, but it will stabilize." "Painful? Feels like my chest is on fire." Zyra's lips curled into a faint smirk despite the situation. "Then perhaps you should try being stronger, human." James shot her a glare but didn't have the energy to respond. The pain gradually subsided, leaving him weak and trembling on the floor. Zyra straightened, her expression unreadable as she observed him. "You survived the initial sink," she said matter-of-factly. "That's a good sign." "Glad to hear it," James muttered, pushing himself to his feet. "So, what now? Do we just live like this forever?" Zyra's gaze hardened. "For now, we focus on survival. This bond may have made us stronger in some ways, but it also makes us a target." "A target? What are you talking about?" Zyra hesitated, her tail curling tightly around her leg. "There are those who would seek to exploit this connection for their own gain. The bond is rare, almost unheard of between two different species. If the wrong people find out..." She trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. James frowned. "So not only am I stuck with you, but now people are going to come after us because of this." Zyra gave him a sharp look. "Do not misunderstand me, human. You are not the victim here. You are the reason this happened. If anyone should be complaining, it's me." James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Great, just great." As the ship's engines rumbled softly, the two of them stood in uneasy silence. The bond that tied them together was undeniable, but neither of them fully understood what it would mean for their future. One thing was certain, though: their lives would never be the same again. Enemies on the horizon. The silence of the ship's command deck was shattered by the shrill blare of an alarm. Red lights flashed across the sleek metallic walls, casting eerie shadows. Zyra, standing near the main console, instantly stiffened. Her sharp eyes darted to the holographic display hovering in midair. "Unidentified ships approaching fast," she said, her voice suddenly all business. James, who had been awkwardly pacing in the corner, froze. "Unidentified. Is that bad?" "That sounds bad." Zyra shot him a glare. "Unidentified means enemy, human. And yes, that's bad." The holographic display expanded to show a cluster of sleek black ships cutting through the vast emptiness of space. Their jagged, predatory design sent a chill down James's spine. "Who are they?" he asked, inching closer to the console. "The Clethar Syndicate," Zyra replied, her tone grim. "Pirates, mercenaries, and scavengers. They'll kill for credits or worse, and if they know about the bond..." James frowned. "What's worse than being killed?" "They could sell us to the highest bidder," Zyra said, her jaw tightening. "A bonded pair like us is more valuable than an entire fleet. Some would pay a fortune just to study us. Others might want to harvest the bond's energy." James felt a knot form in his stomach. "Harvest? You mean, like, cut it out of us?" Zyra didn't answer, which was answer enough. The ship's comm system crackled to life, a distorted voice sneering through the speakers. "Valerian vessel, this is Captain Drac of the Clethar Syndicate. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Zyra's scales shimmered faintly, a sign of her barely contained anger. "They dare to threaten me," she muttered under her breath before turning to her crew. "Shields up. Weapons online. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." James, feeling utterly out of place, hesitated. Is there something I can do to help?" I don't want to just sit here while we're being attacked. Zaira gave him a quick glance, then pointed to a secondary console. You said humans are good with technology, yes. That terminal controls the ship's countermeasures. Learn fast, or you'll die fast. Great pep talk, James muttered, rushing to the console. His hands hovered over the alien symbols on the screen. The translator in his ear whispered their meanings, but it wasn't enough to make him confident. The ship jolted as enemy fire struck the shields. Thyra didn't flinch, barking orders to her crew with the precision of a seasoned commander. Return fire. Target their engines. James fumbled with the controls, managing to activate a system labeled Disruptor Decoys. Small drones launched from the ship, scattering in all directions and emitting false signals. The enemy ships hesitated, their targeting systems momentarily confused. I think I did something, James shouted, a mix of relief and panic in his voice. Zaira's lips twitched in what might have been the briefest hint of approval. Good. Now keep doing it. The ship twisted and turned, evading enemy fire with expert precision. Zaira moved like a force of nature, her every command sharp and decisive. Despite his initial clumsiness, James began to find a rhythm at his console, deploying countermeasures and rerouting power to critical systems. We've disabled one of their ships, Zaira announced, her tone fierce. But the others are closing in. James glanced at the display, his stomach sinking as more enemy ships appeared on the horizon. There's too many of them. We can't fight them all. Zaira's tail lashed the air as she growled. We don't need to fight them all. We just need to buy enough time to jump to hyperspace. The comm system crackled again, and Captain Drax's voice returned, tripping with menace. You're outnumbered, Commander. Surrender now, and I might let your precious human live. James's blood ran cold. Why is everyone so obsessed with me? I'm not even important. To them, you're priceless. Zaira said, her voice low. The bond between us makes you a commodity. They think you're the key to power, wealth, and knowledge. But I won't let them have you. Despite the gravity of the situation, James couldn't help but smirk. Didn't think you cared. Zaira didn't respond, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Determination, perhaps. The ship shuddered violently as another barrage of enemy fire hit the shields. Warning alarms blared, and sparks flew from a nearby console. Shields at 40%. One of Zaira's crew members reported. Zaira clenched her fists. We're running out of time. James scanned the console in front of him, his mind racing. An idea sparked. What if we overload the decoys? If we send out a massive burst of energy, it might blind their sensors long enough for us to jump. Zaira hesitated for half a second before nodding. Do it. James's fingers flew over the controls, activating the decoys and redirecting power to their energy cores. The ship groaned under the strain, but the plan worked. A brilliant flash lit up the void, and the enemy ships veered off course. Their systems scrambled. Hyperspace engines online. Zaira announced. Engaging jump sequence. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines of light as the ship leaped into hyperspace, leaving the Clithar Syndicate far behind. James slumped back in his chair, exhausted but alive. Well, that was intense. Zaira turned to him, her expression unreadable. You performed adequately, human. Perhaps you're not as useless as I thought. James smirked, raising an eyebrow. High praise coming from you. Zaira's lips twitched again, but she quickly turned away. Rest while you can. This isn't over. As the ship sailed through hyperspace, James couldn't shake the feeling that his bond with Zaira was more than just a curse. It might be the only thing keeping them both alive. The mysterious consequences. The hum of the hyperspace engines filled the ship, a steady reminder of their narrow escape. James Carter sat in the medbay, clutching a mug of what Zaira's crew called energy broth. It tasted somewhere between metallic soup and battery acid, but it was oddly invigorating. He needed all the energy he could get. His chest still ached faintly from the battle, or perhaps from the mysterious bond he now shared with Syra. Across the room, Syra stood at a sleek medical console, studying a holographic projection of their linked life forces. The display showed two glowing, intertwined threads, one faint and steady, the other vibrant but erratic. "You're staring again," James said, breaking the silence. Syra didn't look up. "I'm analyzing." "Analyzing me?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" "You should always be worried," Syra replied coolly. "Your physiology is adapting." "Adapting?" James repeated, frowning. "What does that mean?" Syra finally turned to face him, her violet eyes narrowing. "It means the bond is affecting you more than I expected. Your body is undergoing subtle changes to align with mine." James stared at her. "Wait, you're saying I'm turning into you?" "Not exactly," Syra said, her tone clipped. "But your biology is syncing with mine. Your stamina, reflexes, and even your pain tolerance are improving. At the same time, I'm experiencing oddities as well." "Like what?" James asked, leaning forward. Syra hesitated, a rare flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. "I'm feeling emotions I've never felt before. They're foreign, illogical, and unsettling." James smirked. "Welcome to being human." Syra's tail flicked sharply, her irritation obvious. "This is no joke, human. The bond is a serious matter. These changes could have far-reaching consequences for both of us." James set down his mug and stood, crossing the room to stand beside her. "Look, I get that this is a big deal for you, but you're not in this alone. Okay, we'll figure it out together." Syra looked at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, James thought she might actually say thank you. But instead, she turned back to the hologram. "Your optimism is misplaced," she said. "This bond is not a blessing. It's a liability." Before James could respond, the ship jolted violently. The medbay lights flickered, and the hum of the engines faltered. "What now?" James asked, gripping the nearest table for balance. Syra's comm device crackled to life. "Commander, you need to see this," came the urgent voice of her first officer. Syra didn't wait for an explanation. She strode out of the medbay, and James followed close behind. They arrived on the bridge to find the crew in a state of controlled chaos. The main view screen displayed an enormous structure floating in the void, a derelict space station, its twisted metal hull glowing faintly with an eerie greenish light. "What is that?" James asked, staring at the screen. "A relic," Syra said, her voice tense. "From a war long before your species crawled out of its oceans." The first officer turned to Syra. "Commander, it appeared out of nowhere, directly in our path. Scans show unusual energy readings emanating from within." Syra's jaw tightened. The Clithar must have set a trap. James frowned. "A trap? It looks abandoned." "Appearances can deceive," Syra said sharply. "And you should know better than to underestimate our enemies." As if on cue, the ship shuddered again. Sparks flew from a nearby console, and the lights dimmed further. "Commander, the energy field from the station is interfering with our systems," the first officer reported. "Shields are failing and propulsion is at 30%. Syra cursed under her breath. "We have no choice. Prepare an away team. We need to shut down that energy field from the source." James blinked. "Wait, you're going over there? That thing looks like a haunted house in space." Syra shot him a glare. "This is not a debate, human. If we don't act, the ship will be stranded, and the Clithar will find us." James hesitated, then sighed. "Fine, but I'm coming with you." Syra raised an eyebrow. "You're untrained, unarmed, and reckless. Why would I allow you to join the away team?" "Because if this bond is real, you're stuck with me," James said, folding his arms. "And if something happens to you over there, it happens to me too." So, like it or not, we're in this together. Zyra stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. Very well. But if you slow me down, I will not hesitate to leave you behind. Noted, James said with a grin. As the ship's crew prepared for the mission, James couldn't shake the feeling that the derelict station held more than just an energy field. Something about it felt alive. And as he followed Zyra to the docking bay, he couldn't help but wonder if the mysterious consequences of their bond were only just beginning. A galactic dilemma. The towering council chamber of Velaria Prime was a masterpiece of alien architecture, its walls carved from shimmering crystals that pulsed faintly with light. The room was designed to intimidate, and it worked. James Carter stood awkwardly at the center, feeling like an insect under the gaze of the Valerian High Council. Their violet eyes glowed faintly, their regal robes trailing behind them as they loomed from their raised platforms. Zyra stood beside him, her posture rigid and unyielding. Unlike James, she looked unbothered by the scrutiny of her own people. But James could sense the tension rippling beneath her calm exterior. Whether it was the bond or his growing understanding of her, he wasn't sure. Commander Zyra, boomed the voice of Counselor Thyros, the eldest and most imposing of the group. His scales shimmered gold, a sign of age and status. You stand here today, accused of violating one of our most sacred laws. You have bonded with an outsider, a human. The council chamber erupted in murmurs, whispers of disapproval and outrage bouncing off the crystalline walls. James shifted uncomfortably. For the record, it wasn't on purpose, he muttered, earning a sharp elbow from Zyra. Silence. Zyra hissed under her breath. Counselor Thyros ignored James and continued, his piercing gaze fixed on Zyra. Explain yourself, Commander. How did this happen? Zyra took a step forward, her voice steady and authoritative. It was an accident, Counselor. The human did not understand the cultural significance of his actions. Thyros's eyes narrowed. And yet, the bond remains. You know the consequences of such a union, Commander. It is forbidden. A bond between two Valerians is a sacred, unbreakable connection. But with an alien, it is a dangerous anomaly, a threat to our people. James cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the entire chamber. Excuse me, but if I may, I didn't ask for this either. Believe me, I'd love nothing more than to undo it. But since that's not an option, maybe we can focus on what to do next instead of pointing fingers. The room fell silent, and for a moment, James thought he might have crossed a line. Then Thyros's lips curled into a faint sneer. Typical human arrogance, he said. You think you can lecture us on how to handle our sacred traditions. James opened his mouth to respond, but Sarah stepped in front of him. Counselor, the human speaks out of ignorance, not malice. The bond has already formed. We cannot change that. What matters now is how we move forward. Another counselor, a younger woman with emerald green scales, leaned forward. Move forward. The bond is not just a personal matter, Commander. It is a political and biological risk. What if this union destabilizes your abilities as a commander? What if our enemies exploit this connection? The Clithar Syndicate already attacked your ship, did they not? Zyra hesitated, and James could feel the weight of the counselor's words settling over her. Yes, Zyra admitted. The Clithar have shown interest in the bond, but that only proves its value. If we learn to control and understand it, we could turn this so-called liability into a strength. The murmurs in the chamber grew louder, some counselors nodding in agreement while others shook their heads in disapproval. Thyros raised a hand, silencing the room. Your argument is bold, Commander, but the risks outweigh the potential benefits. The Council has already discussed this matter, and we have decided. Wait, James interrupted, surprising even himself. You've decided, without even hearing the whole story. Thyros glared at him, his golden scales shimmering ominously. You dare interrupt this council, human. James swallowed hard but didn't back down. Yeah, I dare. Because you're making decisions about my life without even giving me a chance to defend myself. That bond you keep talking about, it's not just some magical connection. It's a partnership. And whether you like it or not, I'm part of this now." Zyra turned to him, her expression a mix of shock. "And was that respect?" James continued, his voice steady despite the growing tension in the room. "You keep calling this bond a risk, but you haven't seen what we've been through. We fought off the Clithar together. We escaped their traps. And if we can survive that, maybe this bond isn't a curse. Maybe it's a chance for humans and Valerians to actually work together for once." The chamber was silent, the counselors exchanging uncertain glances. Finally, Thyros spoke, his voice heavy with disdain. "Your words are bold, human, but they do not erase the fact that this bond is an aberration. The council has decided that the bond must be severed, no matter the cost." James's heart sank. "Severed? You mean you'd risk killing us both?" "There is a procedure," Thyros said coldly. "It is dangerous, yes, but it may succeed. The bond must not be allowed to persist." Zyra stepped forward, her voice sharp and defiant. "With all due respect, counselor, I will not consent to such a procedure. I refuse to put my life, and his, at risk based on your fears and prejudices." Thyros's eyes narrowed. "You defy the council's will." "I do," Tyra said firmly. "Because this bond is not just a mistake, it is an opportunity. And I will not let fear dictate my actions." The tension in the room was palpable, and James could feel the weight of Zyra's words echoing through their bond. For the first time, he realized just how much she was risking, not just her life, but her honor, her career, and her place in Valerian society. As the council deliberated, James leaned closer to Zyra and whispered, "You didn't have to do that, you know." Zyra glanced at him, her expression softening just slightly. "Yes, I did. We're in this together, human, whether we like it or not." The council's decision loomed, but James couldn't help feeling a flicker of hope. Together, they might just stand a chance. The ultimate choice. The Valerian council chamber was plunged into darkness, save for the faint glow of the crystalline walls. A tense silence filled the air, broken only by the soft hum of the emergency lights. James Carter's breath quickened as he realized the gravity of what had just happened. The council had been deliberating on severing the bond between him and Zyra when the chamber was suddenly thrown into chaos. "We're under attack," shouted one of the guards as a series of muffled explosions echoed through the crystalline halls. Zyra immediately sprang into action, her commanding voice cutting through the panic. "Secure the exits. Protect the council at all costs." James, on the other hand, froze. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained for this. But as the bond flared within him, he felt a surge of Zyra's determination coursing through his veins. He wasn't just standing there helpless. He was connected to one of the most capable commanders in the galaxy. "Human," Zyra snapped, grabbing his arm and pulling him behind a pillar for cover. "Stay close to me. If they're here for the bond, they'll target you first." "What do you mean, if?" James replied, his voice shaking. "This has to be about the bond. They wouldn't just attack a high council meeting for fun." As if to confirm his suspicions, a new voice echoed through the chamber, amplified by some kind of alien technology. "Commander Zyra, human James Carter, surrender yourselves, and no one else has to die." The voice was deep and cold, with a predatory edge that sent chills down James's spine. Zyra growled softly, her tail flicking in agitation. "Drac," she hissed, her violet eyes narrowing. "Clithar scum." James peeked around the pillar to see a group of heavily armed Clithar soldiers forcing their way into the chamber. Their jagged armor glinted in the dim light, and their weapons buzzed ominously with energy. At their head stood Captain Drac, a hulking figure with a cruel smirk stretched across his scaled face. "Do you know how much a bonded pair is worth on the galactic black market?" Drac called out, his voice dripping with mockery. Alive, of course. The research labs will pay handsomely for you both. Zira clenched her fists. Over my dead body. That can be arranged, Drac replied, raising his weapon. James felt a surge of fear, but it was immediately tempered by a strange, unfamiliar sensation. Courage. He realized it wasn't just his own. It was Kyra's, flowing through the bond and steadying him. We need to move, Kyra said, her voice low but urgent. They'll overrun the guards in minutes. The council chambers aren't defensible. Great, James muttered. So what's the plan? Hide? Run? Fight? Zara hesitated, something she rarely did. There's one option, she said, her tone grim. But you're not going to like it. Try me, James said, though he immediately regretted it. There's a ship docked at the top of the council spire. It's fast, but it's heavily guarded. If we can reach it, we might be able to escape and draw the Clithar away from the council. James stared at her. Might. That's not very reassuring. Zyra glanced at him, her expression softer than he'd ever seen it. I won't let them take you, James. I'll die before I let that happen. For a moment, he was struck speechless. The bond wasn't just a burden to her anymore. It was something she was willing to fight for. Okay, he said finally, nodding. Let's do it. Before they could move, a shadowy figure appeared from behind a pillar, blocking their path. James's heart leaped into his throat, but the figure held up a hand in a gesture of peace. Wait, the stranger said. It was a Valerian woman with sleek, silver scales and piercing blue eyes. She wore the robes of a diplomat, but the weapon strapped to her hip suggested she was more than she appeared. Who are you? Syra demanded, stepping protectively in front of James. My name is Lirith, the woman said calmly. I work in the shadows for the council, dealing with sensitive matters. And right now, the council needs you alive, Commander. Why should I trust you? Kyra asked, her tone icy. Because I can get you to that ship, Lirith replied. But you'll need to make a choice. What kind of choice? James asked, already dreading the answer. Lirith's gaze flicked between them. The Clithar are here for the bond. If you let them take one of you, just one, they'll leave the council and the rest of Valyria alone. The other can escape. It's the only way to save your people, Commander. Zyra's scales flared faintly, a sign of her anger. You're asking me to abandon my bonded partner. Lirith met her gaze evenly. I'm asking you to prioritize your duty over your personal feelings. James felt his chest tighten. The bond pulsed faintly, a reminder of their connection. He could feel Xyra's turmoil, her loyalty to her people clashing with her growing sense of responsibility toward him. No, James said firmly. We're not splitting up. If the bond is as powerful as everyone says, then we stand a better chance together. Right, Syra. She hesitated, then nodded. Together, she agreed. Lirith sighed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. But if that's your choice, I'll honor it. Follow me. As they moved through the darkened halls, James couldn't shake the feeling that the ultimate test of their bond was yet to come. The Clithar were relentless, and the Valerian Council's patience was running thin. Somewhere in the depths of his mind, he wondered, how much more could they endure before the bond finally broke them, or made them unstoppable? A bond forged in trust. The Valerian Council spire erupted in chaos. The once pristine halls of shimmering crystal were now scarred with scorch marks, the air thick with smoke and the acrid smell of energy blasts. James Carter ducked behind a collapsed pillar, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he tried to process the whirlwind of events. Beside him, Syra was crouched low, her violet eyes scanning their surroundings like a predator assessing its prey. Her shimmering scales reflected the flickering lights of the emergency systems. She looked calm, but James could feel the storm raging inside her through the bond. A mix of fury, determination, and fear. How are you holding up, human? I rasped, her voice low but steady. About as well as you'd expect, James replied, clutching a small alien weapon he barely knew how to use. So, not great. Zyra smirked faintly. At least your sense of humor hasn't died yet. Their moment of quiet was shattered by a deafening explosion nearby. A group of Clithar soldiers advanced through the rubble, their weapons glowing ominously. James felt a sharp pang of fear, but it was quickly overridden by a surge of confidence that wasn't his own. "Stick to me," Zyra said, rising to her full height. She moved with the grace of a warrior, her tail flicking as she raised her weapon and fired precise, deadly shots. James scrambled after her, feeling clumsy and out of place, but refusing to be left behind. The bond between them pulsed with every step, every action, synchronizing their movements in a way that felt almost supernatural. "You're getting better," Kyra remarked as James managed to disable one of the Clithar soldiers with a well-placed shot. "Don't sound so surprised," James shot back, adrenaline making him bolder than usual. Their path to the Council Spire's docking bay was a gauntlet of chaos, but they pushed forward with unwavering determination. The Clithar were relentless, their forces seemingly endless, but Zyra's leadership and James's growing confidence kept them alive. Finally, they reached the docking bay. A sleek Valerian ship sat waiting for them, its engines humming faintly. The dock was eerily quiet, but James knew better than to let his guard down. "Almost there," Zyra said, her voice tinged with relief. As they approached the ship, the silence was broken by the slow clap of someone stepping into their path. Captain Drac emerged from the shadows, his jagged armor glinting in the dim light. "Commander Zyra," Drac drawled, his reptilian grin stretching wide. "And her precious human. You've been causing me quite a bit of trouble." Zyra stepped forward, placing herself between James and Drac. "Stand down, Drac. You've lost." Drac chuckled, his voice low and menacing. "Lost? Oh no, Commander. This is just the beginning." He raised a clawed hand, and a dozen Clithar soldiers emerged from the shadows, weapons trained on them. James felt a wave of panic, but Zyra's calm determination flowed through the bond, steadying him. "James," Zyra said quietly, not taking her eyes off Drac, "get to the ship. I'll hold them off." "No," James said immediately. "I'm not leaving you." "Don't argue with me," Zyra snapped, her voice sharp but not unkind. "This is my fight. And it's our bond," James countered, stepping up beside her. "We're in this together, remember." For a moment, Zyra looked at him, something unspoken passing between them. Then she nodded, a rare smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Very well," she said. "Together, then." The battle that followed was a blur of chaos and fire. James and Sarah fought as one, their bond amplifying their reflexes and instincts. For every move Zyra made, James seemed to anticipate it, and vice versa. Drac's forces were relentless, but they were no match for the synergy of the bonded pair. As the last of the Clithar soldiers fell, Drac snarled in frustration. "You think this is over?" he growled, raising a detonator in his clawed hand. Zyra's eyes widened. "No." But before Drac could activate the device, James acted on pure instinct. He lunged forward, tackling Drac to the ground and knocking the detonator from his grasp. The two struggled briefly before Zyra joined the fray, her strength easily overpowering the Clithar captain. "You lose," she said coldly, her weapon pressed to Drac's throat. Drac sneered. "Kill me, then, but you'll never be free of the bond. It will consume you both." Zyra hesitated for the briefest of moments, then struck Drac hard enough to knock him unconscious. She turned to James, who was catching his breath nearby. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. James gave her a tired smile. "Of course I did. That's what partners do." Zyra's expression softened, and for the first time, James saw genuine warmth in her eyes. They boarded the ship together, leaving the wreckage of the council's spire behind. As the ship soared into the stars, James and Syra sat side by side in the cockpit, the silence between them comfortable for the first time. "So," James said, breaking the quiet, "what now?" Syra glanced at him, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Now we figure out what it means to be bonded. Together." James chuckled. "Sounds like a plan." The stars stretched out before them, a vast and endless horizon. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, they faced it not as two separate beings, but as one.